In this extraordinary court case, Sandile Mantsoe has denied murdering his ex-girlfriend Karabo Mokoena and suggested that she committed suicide. eNCA's Karyn Maughan has been following that story for us. And am I correct in saying this is a fairly radical change in tack here?
Well, we have known about this for quite some weeks. Of course, there was that ban on the reporting of the bail evidence, but now with that ban being lifted after an application from Times Live, we can report on actually what he said in his affidavit. And he's painted himself as a victim of abuse. He says Karabo Mokoena in fact abused him on his version, that she was very jealous and would often fight with him. Their relationship was tempestuous and up and down, and that in fact she had, on his version, made at least one other suicide attempt where she, according to him, had ingested a lot of pills, and he and a security guard rescued her. He also says she cut her wrists. Of course, her family very much denying this and saying it's completely opposite to kind of the passionate, life-loving young woman that she was.
And the state, of course, saying not at all, we're not buying this.
Well, the state's version of events is even stranger, one would argue. They're saying that Sandile Mantsoe, in the aftermath of his arrest, confessing to a police officer that he had in fact engaged in sort of rituals with Karabo Mokoena that she had, on the state's version, introduced him to, that they had shared blood, that they had cross tattoos. Of course, he's denying he has a cross tattoo, that he had cuts on his body from where they'd done these blood rituals, and that in order for post their breakup to get rid of the jinx that had been forced on him because of this blood tie, it was necessary for him to kill her. And that is exactly what he says the state is saying he confessed to doing.
So legally it's going to be a fairly difficult one to untangle, or not?
Well, I think all of the evidence is on affidavit, and I think the magistrate is going to look at simply what are the facts on the table. The facts on the table are that Sandile Mantsoe admits that he disposed of Karabo Mokoena's body. He lied to her family when they were looking for her so desperate, telling her father that she was in London, telling friends and family he had no idea where she was, when in fact, he would later be confronted with CCTV footage of the two of them together. That same CCTV footage showing him rolling her body out in a bin, on his own version, going to his parents' home, getting pool cleaner and then subsequently petrol, and incinerating her remains in a field in Lyndhurst. His version, of course, is that he had been falsely accused of abuse and was worried what people would think, and then decided to as a matter of course, just burn her remains. And I think the state would be right in arguing that that simply is quite profoundly unbelievable. If you found someone who you believed had tried to commit suicide or committed suicide, the first ordinary reaction for any human being is to seek emergency help. That simply didn't happen. Instead, he put her body in a bin and disposed of it.
But what about this line with the prosecution saying it's also unclear whether in fact she was alive when the body was done?
I think that's one of the most horrifying aspects of this case. We still at this point don't have a cause of death for her, Jeremy, and that is because, as you will know, she was necklaced, so great amounts of her, her face and her head were incinerated. There was large chunks of flesh missing from around her chest area, so it's very difficult for the state to establish a cause of death, and I think they're still in the process of doing that. Obviously, the toxicology and everything will be important because of his allegations about a so-called suicide attempt. But that is a big factor in this, is that up until now we still don't know exactly how Karabo Mokoena died.
So what's the next step here?
Well, essentially what will happen is the state and the defense are filing heads of argument on the 28th of June. On the 30th of June, we will be able to live broadcast the argument for the state and defense in the bail application, and the magistrate indicating that he intends to make a ruling next Friday, if that is possible.
Karyn Maughan, thank you very much indeed. Now, 4 new members